What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's LUMIX Live. We've got, in my view, a fun stream to talk about. And I'm trying a couple of new things here with, in general, Streamlabs. So knowing that we do a lot of questions and kind of comments, throughout the stream, I'm actually trying now one of the plugins to actually have the comments up on the screen so that we can have maybe a little bit more of like cohesion between when we talk about something, that it can be referenced. Still getting used to this. A little bit easier on this side here. So yeah, we're gonna try it. Hopefully everything's working right. Hopefully everything's kind of showing up the way it should. But yeah. So, with that, welcome to LUMIX Live. These are the weekly streams that we do on YouTube here. I try to do them every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Obviously, we have been on a longer streak than we've been for the last couple of months, now that I'm kind of out of having to go to shows and stuff like that. Yeah, these are broadcasts where you get to ask us questions and actually, kind of get some answers. Hopefully we can get as many answers as we can for you. We don't always get to every little thing that y'all ask, but we'll try to get through as many of them as we possibly can. Just fixing the size of this a little bit. For today's stream, given that, at least in the United States, we have 4th of July coming up tomorrow, I wanted to go over and talk about some of the various different features, things like the View Composite. So I want to do a quick run through again on like how you utilize that, how you set it up, and give you a quick demo so that people can reference this, knowing that, there are a bunch of different things like fireworks photography and all that kind of stuff happening that people want to try to get some time with. So I want to be able to kind of cover that, but also just kind of want to go through some of the other stuff that I've noticed some people have been asking and commenting about with things like HEIF, some of the different file formats that we've added to the camera that haven't really gotten a lot of coverage, mainly because obviously a lot of people cover LUMIX products more from a video side, but we've added a lot of photo oriented things in there. So I want to talk about that, some of the tools you have in camera for maybe situations where the software you're working with, the OS that you're working with, doesn't necessarily support HEIF image format. So we have some tools in there for that as well. So we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff, and I can demo it and show you. But as always in the streams, if you have questions that you want to, chat about and talk about, make sure to tag at LUMIX USA. As you can see some people doing, it doesn't really show up the same way in my chat that it does over here, but I can see them when you tag at LUMIX USA. It makes it a little bit easier for me to take a look at it. So, yeah, we're going to kind of go through that stuff. I forgot to turn my TV off, so we'll turn that off. Yeah, so we'll go through that kind of stuff. And yeah, before we jump in fully into that, I want to remind those in the US about LUMIX Pro services. We have the Red and the Platinum tier. These are available for anyone that's purchased a new camera. So if you've got an S1 Mark II, S1R Mark II, or honestly any new camera, be sure to take a look at it. QR code's listed right there. There's the Platinum level service that gets you everything that's in the base program. But you also get, in addition to that 3-year manufacturer warranty, you get 2-day repairs with next-day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs, annual sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, firmware updates, all that kind of fun stuff that, maybe you don't want to do yourself, but you'd rather have someone else, kind of take care of for you. So you can have access to those. It is a paid level service. But you also get an access to membership phone line or a hotline. So if you would rather speak to somebody instead of trying to go through email or chat, you can get phone service. So it is there. I encourage you, if you're in the US, at least sign yourself up for the Red tier. That's going to get your extended manufacturer warranty. And yeah, be all set on that. So let's kind of go back to it. Oh, wow. Okay. That's something new to think about. The chat's going to jump back up when I change scenes. Anyway, yeah, so let's take a look at some of the questions that had come through, and we'll go through there. So Lewis, I currently have the S1 Mark II on order from B&H, except with the overheating reports coming out. I'm definitely thinking about canceling my order. Can you guys speak on the issue? Lewis, so we talked about this last week, about the information that we have with it. Encourage you to take a look at some of the other creators' content with it. There's a lot of bandwagon kind of stuff happening in the industry, and this happens for every brand. So I encourage you to take a look at creators that are producing content similar to yours and see what their results are, what their experiences are with it. Josh Cameron did a really nice kind of exploration within various different recording times and different modes. So I encourage you to take a look at that. If you're ever in question about picking up new equipment, my number one recommendation has always been try to rent it. If a location that you have has rental capabilities, if a dealer that you work with has rental capabilities, rent one. There's a lot of stuff that can be quote unquote tested online, but if that's not your shooting environment, that's not really telling you how it's going to perform for you. So I encourage you to take a look at a bunch of different outlets out there. A lot of different people have been running tests and using the camera, not just sitting doing tests in what for their uses would be an impractical use case. So yeah, take a look at it. There's a bunch of different use cases out there, and they're all going to vary. You got to remember that with the S1II series, they are pushing sensor performance way harder than anybody else is doing pretty much in the industry. So, higher dynamic range, faster frame rates, more instances of downsampling. And for the use cases, remembering that these are hybrid cameras, these are not cinema cameras. We've never, stated that they were cinema cameras. So keeping a lot of that stuff in mind is what I encourage you to do. Do some research, take multiple points of view. Just because one person or a select group of people have their own experiences doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be the experience for you. And, form your opinion that way. I can only ever speak or give on factual data. I'm not going to speculate on things. Different use cases exist across the board. From all the testing I've done, which is in a controlled environment, doing live streaming like this, I have never had a camera overheat doing any of this stuff that I do, but that's only one data point. So that's my that's all I'm going to say on overheating. If you have more overheating questions, anybody in the chat, I'm not going to be addressing them because I don't have anything else to add at this point. So if you're here for that conversation, I'm sorry. Hopefully you stick around and you learn something else from everything else that we're doing. Piku, I do want to get through the myriad of comments that you've added at the beginning of the stream. So we're gonna hammer through these things here. So Piku says, why the change of rec quality in slow and quick? Also sometimes changes rec quality in normal video. Is this an error or is this some logic to this? Should be completely siloed from each other. I will have to look into that a little bit more. I rarely ever use slow and quick, so I would honestly just have to check. Usually if I'm doing anything that's going to be high frame rate and I want to play around and slow it down, I'm always just shooting the regular frame rate. I'm not using slow and quick myself. But I'll look into it and see and try to report back in the next week or two. Probably 2 weeks, because I think next week I'm going to try to do a recorded stream. It depends on if I get back from vacation early enough or if I'm prepping everything enough ahead of time. The number 2 point was, currently in the S1II, we have max full frame C4K with 120p. Can we please get some full frame 4K open gate with 120p, even at expensive width and non-standard resolutions, even something slightly below 4K, but full frame 120. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of what affects readout speed and frame rate. It is not the sensor width or the resolution in particular. It is the height of the sensor that you're reading from. So that sensor, open gate and 120p is, to my understanding, not possible. There is no recording mode option for that frame rate combination. I could be slightly wrong on that, but that's my understanding. So you're not going to see 120p in an open gate format. For those that, I mean, obviously open gate's a topic that a lot of people talk about these days. Open gate, all open gate means is that you're using the full sensor height and width. It has nothing to do with resolution. It has nothing to do with frame rate. It's just that you're using the maximum area that the sensor can record. If you're downsampling to a lower resolution, that's fine. It's just the entire area. So on Micro Four Thirds, it's a 4:3 ratio. On full frame, it's a 3:2 ratio. That's all that it means, is it uses the full sensor height and width. Your resolutions, frame rates, all that stuff is immaterial to it. But your open gate frame rates are typically going to be limited by what the maximum readout is for that full sensor height and width. Because you have to remember, if you're downsampling from that full 3:2 ratio, and you have to do it like in the S1R2's case, if you have to do it from 8.1K, which would be the full sensor height and width, well, downsampling doesn't magically make it read out faster. Downsampling means that it's using the full image, the full resolution that it's recorded at, the frame rate, and then just scaling the image down in post like we do in software. The ways you get around that are things like pixel binning or line skipping and stuff like that, which then produces a substantially lower image quality by comparison to a non-skipped and binned image. And those are things that we don't do to many of the images across the board, except in very select kind of combinations of things where the image quality can be kept to the highest performance that we need it to. So, yeah. Can Panasonic unlock the hot shoe protocol? We've gotten this question before because it's compared direct with Sony's multi-interface shoe. Our hot shoes are completely different in their design and their concept, so I have no idea if it's even possible on our hot shoe, since we use the pin connectors that are typically used for triggering flashes, where some of the others are using an actual like connector that's hidden inside of the shoe for it. So I don't know if that's something that we'd be able to do. Can the S1II USB-C port be used via adapter hub for two things at the same time? No, this is an inherent architecture difference. Cameras are not like computers where your USB-C ports and your CPU and the at this point in modern era in CPUs, where the CPU can control multiple different aspects of multi-inputs. Cameras are pretty straightforward, where it's, hey, this is what it's designed for. So being able to do multiple things through the same port is not something that cameras are typically ever designed for, because there's too many variables, is one. There's no way to guarantee that every single multi-port adapter is going to work. And we've already seen the fact that we've produced things like validated memory card lists and SSD lists and CF Express card lists and all this stuff. People don't tend to follow them anyway, even though we do post them out there. So adding that complexity to it makes it a challenge to really justify going down that path, even if it was fully hardware supportable within the stuff. But it is a conversation that we always have. We always talk about these things with the engineering team. We always talk about them with product planning to see, like, hey, is this something that could be done in the future? Is there a way to navigate situations where even if we put out all the information and people don't follow it, what's the likelihood that everything's going to be okay if they use it? And how much blowback would there be if, only a handful of devices meet the criteria needed to make it work? So, yeah. Any info on which external monitors support camera control from the S1II? Do Panasonic plan to work with Atomos on implementing touch focus on the Shinobi 2? My understanding is that Atomos and I think Portkeys are the two devices that would support touch interface on those monitors with the cameras. But what I don't know is if they've pushed updates to any of their monitors that continue support. I know we've had it with Portkeys monitors a while ago, like the BM5 series. But I don't know if any of that stuff's been tested on the newer series cameras yet. Usually with stuff like that, it's up to the monitor manufacturer. If they've got the information, they have everything they need to deploy it, making sure that their compatibility works on newer products. Lumix Flow, the framing is completely inconsistent with the camera is actually recording. It's much narrower at the top and bottom. I have not found that in my use of it, so I can look further into it for you. And a touch focus indicator is needed. Not sure what you mean by number 5. So, okay, let's take a look at a couple more of the tagged questions, and then we'll go into we'll talk about View Composite first, because that's the more complicated thing to set up over here. Which of the new cameras sensors have the least moire or can handle it best? So since we don't use optical low-pass filters in any of the new series cameras, the S1H is still probably the best-ish handling of it, but I'm not the best person to ask about that because I don't do moire testing side by side. Again, it's not something that's usually relevant, at least from how I have to test cameras. But I would take a look at some of the stuff from like Dan Hopkins, who's done some tests. He's done some imagery with the S1R Mark II, with the S1II. The thing that I'll say is that field of view will affect things like moire. And I believe from what I remember reading about it, things like the S1R Mark II, because it's a much higher resolution camera that downsamples for some of its resolutions, but also includes that low-pass filter, makes it a pretty solid option for those use cases. But also the newest cameras, like the S1R Mark II, seems to be the better of the ones for it. Sorry, I completely went off on two separate things because I saw S1H in there. The S1R Mark II is probably the better of them because it can downsample from 8K to its 4K, so your resolution can help kind of mask some of the moire. But S1 Mark II, it does do downsampling, but it's going to be more down to your field of view that you're filming at too. The Big Show, Surrey sniper lenses for Micro Four Thirds L mount. Don't know. You'd have to ask Surrey about lenses that they would have. Just wanted to mention the narrowband channel. He's not a LUMIX guy, but he's having health struggles. If anyone is in a position to donate, please do. Sorry for the off-topic question. Not a problem, Rhett. Yeah, I just saw an article about that too, so I'd have to look a little more into what's going on over there. Noah, side question. The image I transfer from camera to phone through Lumix Lab looks blurry when I look at them in the app, but clean when my phone gallery, also if I apply LUTs. Might be down to the app and export, they export blurry. I can look into that. I haven't run into any of the same setups there. Al says, best work stream and settings for making HDR videos for YouTube. That'd be a little bit more in-depth conversation. We can talk about that, HDR live streaming. It is doable. I've been looking into it for like the last 2 years. Just I haven't had time to really look and kind of come up with, hey, how to do it. Also, most scenes that you do like this don't require it. So in some cases, it's a lot of extra. As it sits, the fact that we live stream in 4K, so, we're doing 4K 30. The fact that we do that, it is overkill. Vast majority of people view at 1440p on YouTube, so 4K is a little overkill, but it is what it is. Let's do 2 more questions and then we'll drop into talking about the View Composite. That was image transfer app. Something can be fixed. Tron Rembrandt lighting. I'm here for it. Yeah. Give me some hope for B&H shipping date, or tell me to be patient. Sounds like sales have been crazy. Yeah, sales have been crazy for it. It's nuts. Inventory should be coming in, so it should be mid July, I think is the last I heard. If you've got pre-orders, I don't know if that's going to be enough to cover all back orders that are in that I've seen, but we do have more inventory coming in. My GH7 internal battery is dead. I have to reset the date every time Bluetooth doesn't work. Time to use LUMIX Pro service. Yeah, that would definitely be something you want to send it in for, Rhett. Quick question regarding the S1R Mark II. Hybrid crop zoom APS-C mode seems to work only in 1080p and 4K. Is it possible to enable it in other resolutions? So hybrid zoom and crop zoom, you have to remember, it can only ever bring the image down to the pixel to pixel ratio. So in certain cases, because of either the amount that it would have to go down to or the image quality performance that could be derived from it, may be reasons why certain resolutions are excluded with it. 1080p on a 44 megapixel sensor is a really, really small region in the middle. So in certain cases, especially if you go to APS-C, because you're a different amount of scaling that you can go, is why either it, ends up being like half of the, or even like a quarter of the potential usable range for it. So those are things that all come into play with it. That's why you have to have more resolution to be able to do it, to be able to go down to pixel. That's why it doesn't work in 8K. Hi, Sean. Would the implementation of JPEG XL be a thing Lumix is considering in the future? I have my own personal thoughts on this. That's all I can give you. My personal thought is no. Matt Fraser and I go back and forth about JPEG XL and some of the other formats over and over and over again. I am firmly in the camp that HEIF and HEIC image format is what the market has settled on, between our phones, our editing software, and many of the other camera companies. So that's probably what's going to remain the prevalent format as an alternative to JPEG. I know the benefits of JPEG XL. It's a cool thing, and I think there could be some benefit there, but I think what a lot of people would also probably need to understand is that whenever a company wants to deploy a certain kind of image format, and actually maybe we'll just talk about HEIF right now. Whenever someone wants to implement a certain kind of image format, it's not as simple as just saying like, hey, we're slapping this format into the camera and here you go. It's out there. The amount of testing that has to be done to ensure, how many different devices can support it? How many different devices can actually even see the format? Can recognize it? Are there metadata tags that have to be included for things like color space? And how do they interact when they're on the different devices? So making the jump, especially when the fact that like no one else is really using JPEG XL, at least in this kind of use case, means that it's probably not something that you'd see honestly anytime soon. It's kind of like with Lightroom Mobile for both iOS and Android. You can export out an AVIF, which is another format for it. You can export it in JPEG XL or TIFF or DNG or JPEG. So you get so many different formats, and not all of them are compatible across multi-devices, that it just kind of indicates like, hey, if the market's settled on HEIF and that's where most people are, and that's what most devices are able to actually see and record, that's kind of what the market settles with. Image file formats aren't as, I'd say, risky as other potential things that you can do with the cameras. So, all right. So with that, let's actually like talk about using the HEIF format. So we're going to jump over to my camera here. And let me actually do one thing. Let me add chat onto this one as well. Hopefully, let's see if this actually works. It should. Okay. All right. So as you all chat, it should start popping up over in the side there. I hope. Maybe. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Oh well. So HEIF format is something that we added in with the S1II series, and we recently brought to the S1R Mark II. For those that don't know what HEIF is high efficiency image format or high efficiency image codec. It can be written either HEIF or HEIC. Technically, they're slightly different from each other, and it really seems to come down more to which type of OS you're working on and which they can view. So with our cameras, what that means is that I can be shooting in something that is, in our case, RAW as your kind of main image, but I can also capture in a better compression, or at least a more modernized compression for better quality, quick use still images. We're so used to saying like JPEG, right? You know, because you've got JPEG imagery. So with the way this works in our cameras, when you go into the camera menu here, and you're in the photo options, so you do have to be in the photography option to see these menus. You have an option now you'll see under the image quality 1, and then you'll see rec file format. So for 1, this is either RAW plus HEIF. If you're not using HEIF, you'll see that it'll say JPEG here. Then underneath it, you'll see switch JPEG to HEIF. This is where you would enable it if you want to use it. So if I switch into JPEG, again, you see, goes RAW plus JPEG. But you'll see a couple other things added in here as well. So you still have your quality of the image, which would be fine or standard. And for us, if you've never played around with these, fine is high quality, standard is kind of like mid quality. But if I change into HEIF, one, it's going to say here, like, look, you have to remember that, you know, your PC or your smartphone needs to be able to actually, like, see these images or understand them. So you keep that in mind if you're going to use this. But then you'll see HEIF format. Now, we offer 2 different formats for recording with HEIF. We offer an SDR version, standard dynamic range. This is going to be, you know, you expose it, as you see, is pretty much what you get. Your different color formats, all that other kind of stuff, you've got it. It's great. I do want to address this one question from Marv. It says, will HEIF come to the S5 Mark II? Most likely not, because it is an engine revision change. HEIF's not something that you can just simply throw back into the different cameras. So I don't believe it's something that can come back to the cameras prior to the S1IIs, because some engineering had to be done specifically to make sure we could add it in with these. But anyway, SDR, standard dynamic range. Pretty much as, you know, you expose it the same exact way you expose any kind of normal image. It's just regular to go. You can load it on whatever device you want, and you're good. You're fine. Then we have the HDR, which for us is encoded as hybrid log gamma, or BT2100. What this allows you to do, this allows me to capture an image in the HDR color space. This means that I can, while I'm, you know, using it, I can have an image and expose it so that it is, you know, basically designed to take the greatest advantage of dynamic range available on the various displays that can show it. This is why when you go to change into this mode, it states, hey, you got to make sure that your device or editing or monitor or whatever it is can actually view these, because not every device is going to be able to do it. So when you change this into HDR, there's a couple things that you want to kind of keep in mind if you're going to be shooting this and you want to capture it to get the most out of the image for you. So for one, your highlights are way brighter than you would think, which means if you really want to push that HDR look, think about overexposing your images more than you would normally think to. And we have some tools built into the camera that help that. 2, if you shoot regular or just kind of like normal exposure images, you may not see the full effect that you're really looking for on devices like your iPhone. So if I transfer those images onto my iPhone, I can look at them. They trigger the phone to display in HDR, which means that it, you know, you've probably seen this as you scroll through an Instagram feed or anything that supports HDR. All of a sudden, one image is like ultra bright compared to the rest of the feed, and the rest looks really, you know, kind of dull. That's because it's triggering HDR as a still image. And you can do this in, you can do this with photos in things like Lightroom Mobile and tools that allow it, but this gives you a more direct output for it. So yeah, a couple exposure things you want to keep track of, but more importantly, for those that actually like to use multiple different color profiles for your images, you have to understand that HLG is going to be limited to 3 different types of image color profile. You have standard, which would be just your color. You have monochrome, which would be a black and white HDR, and then you have real-time LUT. The real-time LUT, so you can shoot real-time LUT with HDR for this. But a big word of caution, standard LUTs won't work here because standard LUTs are designed for a smaller dynamic range. They're not designed to take advantage of HDR, at least at this point. You would have to design one and export it for BT2100 so that you could actually utilize the biggest advantage of it. So what that does is that if you do shoot to expose more to the right and really get those highlights to pop and really take advantage of what the peak brightness is of your display, you would have to redesign a LUT to take advantage of the brighter white point for it. But you do have access to it, and you have access to make it either in standard or in basic monochrome, and then you can apply your different looks to it. So keep that in mind if you do want to use the hybrid log gamma or the HDR version of the HEIF file formats. Typically, if it's something you want to play around with, I encourage you to try it with just standard first, and to give you some really core, basic info here. If you're an Android user, you can probably skip this for right now. Android devices across the board have some spotty connectivity or compatibility, for HLG and HEIF image format. You can make them work, but you have to convert them to a different file format to really make sure that it works on an Android device. If you're on iOS, it does tend to just be much easier to implement. And that pains me to say because I love my Android devices, but if I'm doing anything in an HDR workflow for stills, it's always going to be sent over onto my iPhone to work with. But yeah, it's a fun way to shoot, and that's just on the one format for it. That's just on the one benefits that you get HDR functionality with it. There are a couple other benefits. One of them is that they're typically smaller-ish in file size compared to JPEG images. So that's one other benefit, but probably the biggest benefit is that HEIF image file format is a 10-bit still image format, where JPEG is a very old, kind of tried and true, it's cross-supported in pretty much any platform anywhere. That format is limited to 8-bit only. So if you want to be able to do things like work with, say, LUMIX Lab and create a more complex look, this will help, at least for how you're working with the image when you're in lab. Something that I think may not really be fully understood is that LUMIX Lab and the way we work with LUTs to apply them to an image is done actually on the raw side of the actual image processing. It's not done to the JPEG or the image that's not raw. These are applied much earlier in the chain. I can't go into too much detail. It is something that we hold a patent for in how that image pipeline works, but it is way earlier than I think most people understand. So just because maybe you throw a LUT in there that kind of looks a little broken on the display on the phone, it's applying it earlier, and it applies it to the raw data, not an 8-bit. So where the benefit you see here is that while you're going to be creating those in lab, you're going to be working with a much more flexible file that's closer to where the LUT would be applied in the kind of like the image pipeline. So you're going to be able to get some more accurate looks out of this. You're going to be able to get a little bit more flexibility. This does also open up that if you want to create looks based in BT2100, so HDR, you can create a look specifically for that and translate your standard looks into an HDR workflow so that when you do post them to things like Instagram or whatever, or a platform that supports it, you can actually take advantage of it, and you're going to get that full look with your colors, with the look that you want, but you're going to be able to take benefit of that higher peak brightness for it. And Jesse, JPEG XL on a roadmap at all? Not that I'm aware of. The industry has pretty much settled on HEIF as the non-raw image format. Cool. Let's take a look at a couple more questions here. The frame markers in Lumix Flow Monitor don't seem to show up correctly in Lumix Lab Monitor. Function could really use lock orientation. We've gotten some good feedback on Flow, and obviously we're always making improvements with it. It's still, I think, in the second kind of firmware update or software update period with it, so it's still a young app, and we're still adding a ton of performance to it. Cliff, I would love to be able to get you an answer for it, but those are discussions that I honestly, I don't have enough knowledge or info at this time to be able to give you any kind of feedback about wattage usage or power or anything like that on the cameras. But know that we are pushing our sensors and our cameras infinitely harder than I think others do. What lens support cropless stabilization? At this time, it is the LUMIX lenses, so lenses that are specifically from us. I don't know if that's something that's coming to Sigma or any of the other L-mount partners. Those are conversations that happen in Japan. Unfortunately, that happen way over any of our heads. Honestly, if anyone ever comes out and says that they know 100% with this, that's not either like myself, Matt, or a formal press release or someone from LUMIX, they don't really know what they're talking about. Fielding, if you shoot an email to LUMIX Live, the email that pops up at the end of the stream, shoot an email to that and mention my name in it. I can have a look, because actually I had a call up about trying to get some updates about the EDU program earlier today. Appreciate your stream songs. A little question: recording in 4K 100 FPS. Am I right in thinking the stabilization mode, i.e., cropless, are active? Yeah. We have all the stabilization modes work for the different frame rates and aspect ratios and all that stuff in the cameras. So yeah. Internal B-RAW for the S1II some days, probably not. Suray Sniper lenses for Micro Four Thirds L mount. I think you'd have to talk with Suray on that show. Any recommendations on matching older 8-bit MP4 GX8 with modern 10-bit Vlog? CineD, and just use the nicest Vlog LUT at a lower percentage. It's going to be a little bit harder to match them. 8-bit footage to 10-bit footage, I don't think that's really that big of an issue. Just remember that, 8-bit, obviously, I don't really need to tell you to remember. You're probably seeing it. You can't push 8-bit footage as hard as you can 10-bit. So if anything, if you want to match them, you actually have to dumb down your 10-bit footage a bit to kind of get closer. But if you really do need to make it easier to match the two, our cameras do have 8-bit options in them. Usually they're going to be found in the MP4 format, so you could put your G9 Mark II into MP4 and try to record in 8-bit, because then you're going to be a little bit closer to parity. But color sciences are very different between those cameras. A lot of things have changed since the GX8. So what you could do is, kind of take two frames, try to match them as close as you can in something like Resolve, and then what you could do is kick out a LUT from that would apply to your G9 Mark II footage, and then just kind of work it that way to kind of neutralize them a bit. But I don't know of anyone that does it already to just kind of make it relatively easy for you to kind of just drop in and go. Can we get an S1II update to use a webcam, just USB-C cable directly? I don't know if it's hardware possible, but we have asked now that we have it in the newer cameras. I like my S1R2, great camera, but really like 3.3K and anything around 4.7K open gate, even just 25p. Minimum full frame open gate being 6.4K is not always practical. XY, I did see your comment before. I would love to know why the 6.4K is not always practical. Because honestly, I don't necessarily understand the commentary about wanting something like a lower res in open gate when it's not really going to change much. And because open gate, most hardware and software performance for Windows and Mac. Doesn't have a problem working with it. I legitimately would like to understand why you would need those. If it's just because it's closer to your delivery resolution, I can kind of understand that. But it's the fact that downsampling and stuff like that's gonna, your 6.4 is gonna look better. But yeah, if genuinely, if you could give me some information as to like why you would need that, it would help us kind of understand what that need is and being able to articulate that to engineering teams, if that makes sense. Talking about copying files from camera to SSD without a computer, Tommy. I know you can't answer, but please, if it's possible, add SSD copy function in the G9 Mark II. Yeah, we have asked about that. Again, I don't know if that's a hardware because the processor limitations are different. They're the same series of processor, but there are always improvements made and slight changes between iterations and models that cameras deploy. So I don't always know if that's going to always be able to be done 100% backwards. Sacred City, it was nice meeting you at Build. I was that guy that showed you me tattooing LUMIX on a guy from Osaka. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's definitely cool to put a face to a name. Yeah. Anyone that was at Build, it was awesome meeting a lot of you that showed up. So it was cool to actually link up with people. I would love to be able to do more things in person with that kind of stuff. And I maybe do like a in-person LUMIX Live someday where people can just, hey, I'm going to be here streaming. Show up if you want to be on the stream. It could be dangerous, but people do stream snipe. So, all right, let's see here. Please consider allowing transfer for MOV files just as MP4 light files via LUMIX Lab. Why is this not the case already? They're just video files. Why restrict to one codec? So there's a couple reasons why MOV can't be transferred. For one, MOV is not as widely supported across mobile devices. So while I have access to probably, this is a 15 Pro Max, this is a Z Fold 6. These are probably some of the more modern supported mobile devices, so they support the widest range of codecs and formats. MOV sometimes just does not play well with many devices. Even on the iPhone, if I try to bring a high bitrate MOV format onto this phone to try to do anything with it, it lags the hell out of the phone. So that, in a lot of times, those use cases are why certain formats aren't deployable yet. The usability just isn't there, and for the handful of devices that could support it, there are 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1 other devices that are used by our users that couldn't work with it. So it doesn't make a good user experience across the board. The other thing, the other kind of reason why, is that file sizes. MOV file sizes are gigantic, or they can be gigantic. So if we were to take MOV where we can record 600 megabit per second, right? And you bring that to a mobile device, you're talking terabytes potentially for certain jobs. Or a short clip that in MP4 Lite would be, a couple hundred megs. Now all of a sudden you're into gigs for an MOV file. So a lot of it sometimes just more comes down to what's the practical use case, especially with things like designed for quick delivery and quick transfer, versus if, say, I'm working and I'm editing and say iPad is my main, kind of editing method, I can just plug the camera into that device and send them that way, which is something you can still do. If you want to transfer your MOV files, you can just plug your camera right into your mobile device, whether it's iOS or Android, and it shows up as a drive. So you can access the cards. It's a glorified card reader at that point. And you can copy them over that way and do it that way. It's just that Lab is not designed for that. Lab is designed for a much more lighter weight transfer of quick videos. That's why MP4 Lite was created, and that's why it's deployed on those earlier cameras for now. Is it possible for super resolution images to be exported to a universally editable format? I've read it's only editable in LUMIX software. Cobra, that's not true. Our high resolution shot mode is a standard RW2 file that can be read in any compatible software. If I take a swing at, I think what you're referencing about, only editable in Lumix software, it's probably that Adobe still has not addressed their software problems with high resolution shot mode. That is on Adobe. That's not on us. They have the information. It's an RW2 file. If you're having issues or you see anyone having issues with that, you got to contact Adobe and tell them about it. I still have my reservations about Adobe's processing of our imagery. So that's definitely something, if you're going to work with our high-res photos, I still highly recommend using Capture One. I've heard from some people that On One has also got some good support as well. But yeah, they're just RW2 files that are high-res. It's up to the software company at that point to deploy their editing or their demosaicing of it. They've not had problems with our stuff in the past, or they've had minimal problems with our cameras in the past. There just seems to be some exceptional issues with the new cameras that have launched that honestly have boggled my mind, but have solidified that at this point, until I see like a firm update from their software side, I just can't recommend using it. Recommend using Capture One for high-res files. And yeah, some of the older cameras, like I see someone saying S9 high-res files work in Affinity V2 just fine. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where you'd be. I've used Camera Raw and Photoshop with the 96 megapixel S5 Mark II images with no problem. Yeah, S5 Mark II series don't seem to have a problem. It's just the S1II series, they seem to have long-winded problems with the files for now. And I like Adobe. I like the software. I've grown up using it. I've used it forever. I still use Lightroom Mobile. But I can't use Lightroom Classic or Photoshop Adobe Camera Raw for pretty much any of the new cameras because I see a substantial difference in the quality that I get when I use Capture One or any other program compared to what Adobe has, and it's very uncharacteristic for these particular files. Kofi is here. Hi, Kofi. How are you? Hope you're doing good. Let's see here. Saw a couple other ones that came up here. All right, let's before we go any further, let's talk about Live View Composite. So I want to talk about Live Composite for those of us in the United States that are going to be, celebrating the 4th of July. We've got that coming up, firework displays, all that kind of fun stuff. So if you've never used Live View Composite before, one of the first things that you're going to do, and I'm still trying to figure out where I should put the chat when I'm in this view that it's kind of visible. Let's move it up here for now. So, if you want to use Live View Composite, there's a couple things that you want to kind of keep in mind. So for one, you got to have your camera in full manual exposure. So that's making sure that if you look, you see that there is, I changed into full manual exposure. This changed the dial to M on the mode dial. You're good to go. Second thing is you can do this in any of the color formats that you want. And that is a terrible place to have that. Let's move that back down there. In this case, we're going to show this with the HDR. So I'm in hybrid log gamma and I'm in standard. So we're set there. The third thing that you're going to do is, at least what I recommend, is press and hold one of your function buttons that you want to change out, and you're going to assign it to Live View Composite. And Live View Composite will be found on the new cameras. It's found under the Others Photo Option 2. So in this case, it's page 2. And you'll see it says LC or Live View Composite. Once you have that mode selected, you then literally just press that button. You can set a shutter delay. This is if you don't have a cable release or you're not working with the lab app or anything where you can do remote triggering with it. So in this case, I'm going to leave it on 1 second because I don't have a cable release attached. And then I'm just going to click Start. Now, a couple things you'll notice here. For one, my shutter speed cannot go any faster than 1.6 of a second. I can go slower, so I can go much longer in exposure, but we're going to set this to 1.6 of a second. And then I'm going to stop my aperture down, and I want this image to actually be quite dark. So we're going to set this, we're going to stay at 320 ISO. 320 ISO because I'm shooting in HLG. And we're going to set this to F13, and I'm going to flip this to manual focus for this particular case. But now, what I will do, it is super simple. I literally will just press the shutter button. It does a single frame to build the black frame for noise reduction. And then I just hit the shutter button again. And now that image is going to start building. So now we see that that image is not getting any brighter. It's just running. We're at a 5-second exposure. And it's not getting any brighter. What I then do is in this case, I'm going to show you with an LED, but you would do this for things like lightning or fireworks, things like that. I have this set and I'm going to paint some red. So all I do now is I take this light and I just start bringing in the red light. But what's cool about this is that I can watch it build. So as I bring this light in, you'll see right below me here, you start seeing that red paint onto the background. It's kind of going to turn a little bit more purple because I've got a blue light over on this side. And I can start, moving this light in, painting how I want that to look. But what's cooler about it is if I change this to, let's change this to an effect light. So let's not do something that's going to make people get, let's do party. Let's bring this down a little bit lower in intensity because I want it to actually show. All right. So we got this set for, it's going to cycle through different colors. But what's cool about this is that now if I move this through the frame, you can see that you actually watch the trails build. So let's do something a little bit different. So we're going to do another image. We're going to run it this way. And for now, I'm going to change it back to hue saturation. We're going to do this on red. So now what I can do is I can literally, now that we're running that image, I can literally do something where I just paint streaks, right? So we're painting streaks through the image. So cool, we got something there, but then I can, let's change this color to, let's change this to, we're going to keep it the theme, I'm going to change it to blue. Alright, it's not exactly the right blue, but now I can literally just do this. And you can paint and create these different images. So the concept that if I'm trying to create an image and I really want to kind of, emphasize, if I want to capture, fireworks, I can set my exposure, know that the fireworks are going to be really bright and actually catch the whole trail, watch the burst. If I'm doing a long shot where, like, say, hey, I'm photographing like a city skyline, like here in Austin, our fireworks are out on Lady Bird Lake, and you get an awesome look of the city skyline right behind the fireworks if you're shooting from the south side of the city. I can be setting my camera up, set my exposure so that the skyline is properly exposed, and then just wait for the fireworks to fire. As they fire, I watch them build, it does the burst, and then the second I'm happy with it, I just have to press the shutter button again, and that image is saved. And just do the same procedure over and over again. You don't need a long exposure to do this, so you can keep a short shutter duration with this. Usually I'd say keep it around about a second if I want to do it like that. But I can play around with these things, and it will just keep giving you more and more images that normally if you tried to do this separately, you'd end up having like, hey, you don't see the image build. You hope that you got that one image, and then you have to wait for a noise reduction to run and all that kind of fun stuff to happen. The second I have looked at that image and I've taken that image, it's done. So, yeah, in fact, actually, that one was still running. So now, like, if I play back, you see, one, that image didn't change on that one. But the previous image that I captured, if I can go to it, there you go. Now, this is also something cool, too, because you can use this for other kinds of effects. So I saw someone mentioning about, like, car photography. You could 100% use things like this for car photography. If you've got, like, light, sticks and stuff like that, and you want to add some effect. A lot of people I know will do that in software, add like light trails and all that kind of stuff. You can do it practical with something as simple as a tiny little LED as well. It'd be a pretty cool little setup. Marv says, can I set a shutter of like 20 seconds in this mode? I'm thinking for light painting with Milky Way in the background. You can. The thing to remember is that if you're going to do a 20-second exposure, obviously the image for Live Composite is going to update every 20 seconds because you have to expose for that 20 seconds. So it can work. The difference with Live View Composite, if you're going to be doing Star or anything Astro, is that usually to really get the full effect, you're going to fall outside of the range to get pinpoint stars. Because light painting is going to run longer. And at that point, it's not really a major difference than just kind of shooting it because you're still not going to see it update in that 20 seconds. But on the flip side of it, you can do it at a faster shutter speed, but at that point, you would have to, obviously up your shutter speed or up your ISO if you want to be able to do like actually capturing like the Milky Way stretching through the sky. But if you're cool with star trails, 100% you can do it. And actually, again, I've done a couple of them where you do light painting, you paint out a path or a model or person or group, whatever it is you're doing. If you have like a fireplace running and you get all the embers kind of flying around, it can look really, really cool because you just let the stars build and whatever you're doing in the foreground light-wise isn't going to affect them. They're just going to grow and now you get all these complex layered looking images to it. So, yeah. Let's see a couple other questions here. We did those. We did those. We did that one. Let's see, top-down driver. Is AF being continuously worked on? It would be nice to get auto-identification of subjects and bird tracking added to the system. The SNR Mark II is near perfect in most respects. Yeah, we're always working on improving and changing and adding different things to the system. Our system does, require more, I would say, intent in the subject that you're going to photograph or use video with the subject detection options. Well, I know some others have a little bit more of where you turn that control over to the camera. But we're always evaluating if things like that are possible. Yeah. So, but to be clear, I don't know if they are. So, Bob says, thanks for the elaboration on HEIF. If I would do a time-lapse in HEIF, is there an internal option to render a video that implements the HDR data? I don't know, actually. That's a good question, because we can actually just take a quick look at that. So let me put the camera in aperture priority. Let's get myself wide open. Let's change to this. Let's get myself out of that. And let's go to interval. So I'm in the intervalometer right now. So one of the other things, LUMIX cameras have a built-in time-lapse tool if you've never used it before. So we've got time-lapse here. I can create my interval. If I don't know exactly what I need, I can just push display and plug in, how long of a project. In this case, let's say I want to do a 24 frame. I know it's not 23976, but it's close enough. Let's say I want to make this a 10-second video, and let's say I want to have this record for 5 minutes. So it's going to say it's 240 images, shooting an interval of 1.2 seconds. So if I hit display, I can insert that information. Now it's added in. So cool, we've got this. Let's Make sure I get everything else set up right. I can turn exposure leveling on. Exposure leveling helps with if you've got aperture blades opening and closing. Modern cameras, because they're not an aperture like what you see on lenses like this. Let's see if I can get that. It's where it's a manually controllable aperture that opens and closes. That would not change. Electronically controlled apertures won't always go to the precise exact closing. There's always a slight little variance between them, so exposure leveling helps with that. And then on top of that, we see here, as far as the image format that I'm recording in, I'm in HDR, HLG standard. And let's just click and let this go. I'm going to peel off that while it's going. It is still running. I just don't want to have the flashing screen on there. So we're just going to do a quick one here. We're going to let this run while we address some more questions, and then Bob will take a look at what you can do playback-wise for generating these videos. At least I think that works over HDMI. And yeah, we'll go through there. XY, thanks for the response. Love your involvement. I often shoot jobs where the client just wants the footage for social media, etc. It's much easier to transfer smaller files. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so I guess the question would be, if you're going to be delivering to a client, you know, the footage, are you just delivering them the open gate footage and then letting them kind of figure it out on their own? In which case, I would argue open gate would be a weird thing to provide a client, and file size being a concern if they know that they're going to have to go in and do some editing to it to get the different crops out of it. Not saying that those customers don't exist, but that is kind of a reason why we do have like MP4 Lite, which on some of the cameras is, I think it's like 3.8K, like Art Vision mentions below. So we always do look into it, and we are looking at, you know, is MP4 Lite appropriate for some of the other cameras? Because remember, MP4 Lite was designed for rapid, quick production, and not even really what I would call production, more like just social media edit. But we know that a lot of people have adopted MP4 Lite and really kind of enjoy using it. Sometimes things like that just take a little bit of time to kind of work on, because remember, that's only 30 frames per second. We have asked if we're able to do 23976 with it, or even 60p as an option for those that do want to use a lighter weight file and don't have a problem going to MP4. But at this point, we haven't gotten any kind of updates as to, you know, do we have it? Is it ready? Is it something that can even be done? Is the MP4 Lite format something that was is compatible with it? Because remember, it is something that we just started. So let's see here. I love MP4 Lite, would love it for other resolutions besides 3.8K. Yeah, it does start, like Marf, it does start, I think, to get into a bit of a weird area, because MP4 Lite was only ever designed as OpenGate Lite, as a mode designed so that you could take advantage of OpenGate with multi-aspect and use it on a mobile device. If you wanted things like other resolutions in MP4 Lite, you've got MP4. There are different aspect ratios available there. You do have 8-bit, you have 10-bit. They are typically lower bitrate options than MOV, and they're transferable to mobile devices. So we do have them. It's just a matter of that MP4 Lite, and honestly, I think from day one it should have been called OpenGate Lite, because that was what it was designed for. But yeah, we can always ask and see if there's any kind of future for that kind of stuff. Let's see here. I know I missed a couple of questions, so I'm gonna have to go back up through the chat a little bit. Super resolution question. Could we potentially see an update to disable forcing us into APS-C mode for APS-C lenses and letting us crop zoom to whoever we are feeling? Many lenses cover wider than traditional APS-C. Rhett, so that wouldn't be something up to Panasonic. The Element Alliance has very specific command protocols for how the lenses operate, how the cameras are designed, and how they all fall within alignment of what they're allowed to do, what is within the specification. Just because some lenses, can cover larger than APS-C is not a compelling enough reason to open that door. What I think a lot of people forget is that a lot of us that are in this industry, a lot of us, either, a lot of us either have a decent amount of experience in filmmaking or photography or technology, but there is also an exponentially large percentage of people that that have not had experience in this before. And if they buy the wrong lens and they put an APS-C lens on the camera, but it shows vignetting in the corners and they don't know what's going on, well, that causes a return, that causes negative commentary about the product, even if it ends up being something that's users, like what would be called user error. So all companies have to keep that in mind, and they have to think about that. The other side of this is that optics engineers design lenses for coverage on certain areas, and that's what they're designed for. Just because a lens covers a wider or a bigger area doesn't mean that's what that lens should be able to do. It doesn't mean that, hey, just because that lens can cover that, the manufacturer would ever want that actually being out there, because those areas were never designed to be used. It can cause negative impacts of product evaluation, of perception of a product, because people access things that were not ever intended to be used. They were designed because maybe that's how they had to design the lens to get the performance they wanted out of it, so that, yes, it could cover more, but really the area of design interest was the smaller field of view. So that's one of those things that, honestly, I understand why people would want it, but you're not going to see a brand openly do that, because there are too many negatives to it. There's too much damage that can be caused to the industry of people that are early in their journey, that don't have enough knowledge to understand that, hey, I bought this lens and yeah, it's an APS-C lens, or maybe they don't even know what APS-C or full frame is, or maybe they don't understand, the nomenclature for different products out there. So they think they bought a certain lens, but it's not actually the right lens for the camera for what they're thinking of. So a lot of that stuff has to be taken into account. So yeah, I don't foresee that happening, Rhett, aside from the fact that it's just not part of the Element Alliance communication protocols. Marlene, hi Marlene. This has been playing with focus stacking in the S1II, and I'm happy to report that it also works with third-party lenses. Other brands only work with their own brand lenses. Yeah, the focus stacking does work with, so far, and my experience is the same. So far, it works with any lens that I throw on there. That is autofocus and does communicate with the camera. So, is there any discussion with Sigma to expand the list of lenses for cropless stabilization? You'd have to talk to Sigma on that one. All right, let's take a look. So this image, this group of images for this time lapse finished. We'll see that I have a selection of images here that are all captured. Now, let's take a look and see if I can get into the menu to do time-lapse video. I can. So let's do time-lapse video. You'll see here that it's got the group of images that I captured. And again, these are in the HEIF 10-bit image format. And it won't let me do it. Is that because... Let me double check. Let me see if that's because I am out over HDMI. No, it just won't let me. So that's something I will have to take a look at and talk with the engineers about. Is that if that's something possible, or if there's a way to have it that it would convert to standard dynamic range for it. So, yeah, let's see here. We're at 10 after. Unfortunately, I do have to actually wrap the stream a little bit earlier than I normally would be doing. So, Art Vision says, yeah, I have an L-mount APS-C lens. It's great on the go, but even I had to dial in with crop zoom to make sure it's not getting any vignetting. If I was new to cameras, it would have thrown me off. Yeah, that is a legitimate concern. I think all camera brands have that concern, is we have to make the products easy enough for most people to understand and work with, and make sure that compatibility is straightforward enough. Because even in a professional sense, I've picked up lenses that, and I've been doing this for a while, I've picked up lenses that I thought were full frame coverage but aren't, and I put them on the camera and now I'm like, oh, all right, well, now I got to deal with this as part of my situation. And we all remember the days of the issues that people had with capturing 4K 60p from an APS-C region. Now that we don't have that anymore, let's not go back to those kinds of conversations, because field of view changes and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah, so it is 10 after. I do have to wrap the stream up today. Thank you, everybody, for the questions and all of the comments and conversations that you've all had. I think it's really awesome seeing the feedback, the questions, the comments, the kind of just interaction that everyone has here. These are fun streams to do, and really excited to keep doing them and bring more information to you. If I didn't get to your question, or if you have questions that you want to have us answer in more in depth, or that you want to see us do in future streams, make sure to drop those questions in the comments after this video. It's much easier for me to see them, be able to figure them out, and kind of work off them for next week's stream. Yeah, outside of that, if you don't already and you want to continue conversations like this, make sure to check out the LUMIX Discord. It's discord.gg/LumixUSA. We have a link down in the description. You can go check it out over there. I'm mostly active over there, so you can always tag me. I'm Sean at LUMIX on Discord. And, actually join the community, ask questions, troubleshoot with other people, give us suggestions. We have an entire channel devoted to actually just getting suggestions from you guys. Check us out on Instagram, over on TikTok, all those platforms. If you like these videos, subscribe. If you know people that are looking for this kind of information, or are maybe giving information out that's, kind of counter to what maybe we say on these streams, maybe recommend, like, hey, join here. Actually talk directly to us. To my knowledge, we're the only camera brand that's actually doing this still. So you want to be able to talk directly to the camera brand, you got us right here. With that, thanks again, everybody. For those in the US, I hope you have a good day tomorrow. If you've got off, if you have to work, I'm sorry. But yeah, I hope everyone has a good day, good weekend. Get out there, create some cool stuff, take photos, create videos. If you're a video creator and you've never done photos, try it. You might like it. If you're a photographer and you've never done video, try it. You might like it. Yeah. Otherwise, take care. Have an awesome day. Great weekend. And I'll see you next Thursday, 2 p.m. right here, YouTube.